What's up guys, Alex Corey here with KC Gardens. In this micro video we're going over some of the details of the annoying parts of running a micro business, such as clientele, favorite people to sell to, and packaging. Coming up. So ideally, you don't have to worry about packaging too much. So if you can sell at a farmer's market, or your ideal clientele is just a close-knit group of friends, family, people you know, they won't really care about packaging too much. You can give it to them in a Ziploc bag, brown paper bag, just anything you have on hand. That keeps costs down and ensures freshness. There's a close personal touch to that, and that's ideal. But if you start getting a little more business oriented and you start selling to resellers or doing a home delivery service where you don't know the conditions it's going to be in for an extended period of time, you have to start worrying about packaging, breakdown in containers, and just how the person is going to handle your product and refrigeration, things like that. So we're going to go over my top three outlets to sell to. We'll go over my favorite, or we'll go over my least favorite, and we'll work to the best ones, in my opinion. This is completely context dependent. So I don't sell to farmers markets at the moment because we are a microgreen predominant shop, and in my area there are lots of organic farms and they all do a little microgreens, so the farmers markets actually don't let you in. We just actually found one this week that will, but they used to not let you in. They would have a board, so to speak, that would approve you, and if you just had microgreens to sell, they wouldn't let you in since all the farmers had some amount of microgreens. But we will do a test run with that new one this weekend, hopefully. So that's usually the top tier one, is the farmers markets, because it commands a premium price. You get to chat with your customer, you find your ideal clientele. You can give them a business card if you have a online market to sell from. Usually you can subscribe them to that. You get the face exposure and the wow factor of seeing things growing in front of you, and you can just give them to them right there as a sample and enlist a new market customer, home delivery client. Chef de cuisines of restaurants often frequent those, so it's good. Probably the best place to get exposure so you don't have to deal with marketing, Facebook ads or Instagram ads, anything like that. You're probably going to have to do that anyway if you want to expand the business, but that's a great place to start. We can't do that, so we've had to rely on word of mouth and other avenues. My least favorite clientele, unfortunately, is restaurants. Not because it's not worth it. Restaurants are the most profitable place to sell microgreens to, but because of the timing and the specificity and likelihood of them to change orders. Restaurants are the most picky people, or rather chefs and chef de cuisines and executive chefs are the most picky people I have met when it comes to microgreens, and that's just because of their craft. So on something like a Rambo radish, I have gotten requests to change something like this, which is all of an inch, down to ½ inch. Some micro harvesters will just harvest the leaves because people just want to put 2 leaves on a plate. And you'll often see that from Rambo. It will just be the leaf. They want no stem. So that's why they command such a premium price, is if they're going to be that specific and demanding, it's going to be a higher cost per ounce or container, just because of the amount of time it's going to take and the attention to detail, and probably different harvest method. So that's why I have very sharp specific knives, is for restaurant clientele, or just making very specific mixes like that, where you can't just take a handful and cut across the bottom. You have to do specific tailored stem lengths. So restaurants are definitely some of the more wow factor mixes, but those are your premium price points, and you can definitely offer those to resellers or home delivery, direct to consumer clientele, but they're less likely to want to pay that price point, but you can just change the stem length. So that is what we do. Is I have the same offerings for direct consumer, but it is probably $1 or $2 less per ounce, and we just cut where we normally would. So there's an inch or 2 inches of stem on the product, whereas for a restaurant, put the picture here like this, or over here, this mix, that's my premium mix, and the stem length is tailored. There's no more than a ½ inch of stem on any one of those. Next most favorable would be a reseller, and this is going to either be distributor. I'll put the ones that we sell to. In the Western North Carolina area, we have a bunch of these and they're fantastic. That's Mountain Food Products. We have Mother Earth Food. That is, the big version of that would be US Foods. So that is, or Cisco. So that's the ones most people know. US Foods and Cisco products, they're distributors. They're aggregators. They buy tons of produce from farmers, and then they deal with the marketing and selling to their endpoint. I do like the smaller scale ones we have in Western North Carolina because people know what microgreens are, and there is a bit of a market for them. The nice thing about them is they buy so much product and do all the legwork for you. So if you can give them samples, bring in a good amount of the specific stem length you want. So it depends on the distributor, but most of the time, definitely know who they sell to. We have a distributor we sell to that is mostly for restaurants. So we give them our premium mixes with a little more stem than we would selling directly to a restaurant, just because it cuts the cost down. So the only bad thing about a reseller is they are going to mark it up on their final product. So you have to give it to them at a price point where they're probably going to jack it up maybe 20%. So you have to make it profitable for you to harvest still. So it's usually a little extra stem just so you get as much of a tray as possible without having it just be a lanky product. Now if they're going to do a home delivery, it probably matters less because direct consumers care less if it's going on their salad or in a sandwich in their daily as actual food, opposed to just a garnish on a plate like a restaurant would. That's different from a retailer, so that's like a co-op or just a grocery store, which you're going to have to sell wholesale pricing because you are going to be competing with a bunch of people on a shelf, and your packaging matters way more. So I have these here. This is a 32-ounce clamshell, recyclable. If you can get compostable, do that. We go through Webster on store. I found the compostable ones, which are usually corn-based, don't hold up well. So I really like this tamper-proof seal, and the compostable ones are about $1 per clamshell more, and they don't hold up well for more than about a week in a fridge. There's a film they start gathering, so I'm not sold on them yet. This is a much bigger clamshell. This is what I use for my samplers. Webster on store, and the links are down below, also have these specific dimensions, which I'll put, I think it's a 6 1/4 by 9 3/4 by, there's a specific size that's good for a 14-ounce sampler. So home delivery clientele will get that. That's only offered through them. If you're in the Western North Carolina area, Patchwork online marketplace is a great reseller. That is an online co-op, so that we're a member of that. It replicates a farmer's market online. You have a pickup option or a delivery option. Delivery option obviously will have an incurred fee, but for the amount of diversity and product in that, it's a fantastic service. The sampler is included in that, and just our regular 3-ounce clamshells as well of the staple products: radish, broccoli mix, pea, and this is our green pea we're trialing out, and the tendrils on these are pretty cool. So there's less leaf structure and more tendril on this. They saute better, so we're running both our Austrian winter pea, which is more leafy, and then the new tendril. These guys, I think, taste a little better. They are a little more expensive, so that would make sense. But Rambo, radish, and red acre cabbage are here. For retailers, you're going to put the most packaging effort in. So you have to have your, has to be catchy to the eye. So I have a plain black and white label, which I'll show here. I was printing this in color, but it was an extra 20 cents a label, and the label and packaging are your highest cost. So if you can keep those down, you can keep the price of your cost per ounce down to sell. Basically, you just have to figure out that a lot of the co-ops we sell to actually have a 60% markup on microgreens. So if we sell it for my wholesale price on microgreens for this area is about $1.25 per ounce, and that's for the really well producing ones. So that's for a sunflower, that's for a pea, that's for a radish, and a broccoli. And you can't get more than that. That's very low. That's the lowest you want to go. And I usually try to aim for about minimum of $10 a tray to make, and probably half of that is profit. But the more you incur in packaging costs, the lower that comes down, and it becomes not worth it at a point for how particular and much attention to detail microgreens are. But I'll put all the links for all the packaging down below. So retail is where most of your costs are going to come from if you decide to do that, but that can also be a very reliable outlet. So the nice thing about resellers in general is it's a guaranteed market per week. Usually they'll have an established recurring order that they'll place or accept, and you can throw extra in there some weeks. If you don't meet it, they don't really care. So there's just not a lot of there's a lot of flexibility built into that relationship, and it tends to be more long term. It's less phased based like wheatgrass. A lot of people do wheatgrass juicing phases, so you don't have to constantly be shifting your seeding numbers around. And my favorite outlet at the moment are direct consumer. So this would be a farmer's market if you had it, or home delivery. Home delivery is booming, and it has been booming since beginning of last year, 2020, just with lockdowns and everyone not really wanting to go to a grocery store. So home delivery skyrocketed, and it has come back down a little bit, but if you can create a decent web platform that people can order from you, usually pre-order, since if you're small scale, you're going to probably want to have to seed to scale, meaning only seed what you know you can get rid of if you don't have a farmer's market to sort of dump the excess onto, as it were. Home delivery gives you a nice recurring sign up. You can plan a little better, and it incurs a premium price. So I will charge a little less than I would at a restaurant, because you can have longer stem lengths. So you can usually get 2 inches of stem on something and use the full tray, because the consumers are generally more interested in the nutrition than the aesthetics. You can do a lot of education that way and use all the product you have instead of worrying about where you're cutting it. Obviously everything still needs to look good, but it is usually less picky and the easiest to harvest, so it takes the least amount of time. The only annoying part about that is just the changing of the orders, and I would suggest having like a delivery fee for anything under a minimum order, just because it is a lot of time driving around and you have to make it worth your while, and gas and everything. So usually there's a built-in delivery fee. I do it under $25. If it's over 25, then that's fine, since gas is a little expensive right now. If that gets cheaper, then you can lower it to 20, but generally you do want to have around that mark, and that's usually about a sampler. So this mini microgreen, about 14 ounces of microgreens, is about 20 bucks. If you're just delivering a clamshell or a plastic bag worth of microgreens, 5 ounces, 3 ounces, something like that, definitely needs to be worth your while. So build a delivery fee in there. But just wanted to go over those 3 main avenues. If you're just building a business now, and there aren't a ton of co-ops or fresh organic food retailers in your area, and that holds true for a lot of rural areas still, probably you're going to end up focusing direct to consumer. So that involves a lot of education around the nutritional content of microgreens, and a lot of outreach and getting in front of your consumers. So that's where Facebook ads, which are still the best, or if you have a small enough town, you can put up flyers. Or when I started, I printed off a bunch of flyers from Vistaprint and just dropped them in people's mailboxes. That didn't work too well, but it does give you a lot of questions. So I found that people would email from that flyer and ask a lot of questions. It might not return a ton of paying customers at the moment, which is why Facebook ads still dominate, just because it puts them right in front. You obviously have to have a lush, colorful picture and probably a nice offer, like free delivery on their first delivery for a sampler. You can also make a smaller version of this, or they make clamshells like this with 4 different compartments and just put little samples in those compartments. Actually, let me see if I can find one for you. Yeah, something like that, where it just has different compartments, and then just either write directly on it, no one will really care, or have a sample label. You shove it on this with your big ones. So if you want, you can do a spread the color around, do a sunflower, do a nice looking pea, do a radish mix maybe, so a red arrow and a Rambo, and then usually red acre cabbage or some purple, and a and a radish, your staples that you're going to include. You can do a couple mixes if you want, whatever you want to market to that specific clientele, but these are your main container types that most micro growers will use. Some use a bigger one than 3 ounce, some people will use a 5 ounce or 6 ounce if you don't want to mess around with any quantity this small. Just if you have a more robust label and your packaging is more expensive and more colorful, then you want to have a higher container weight just to absorb that cost. Some people are okay with that, but a lot of people don't want to pay over $7 or $8 for a container of microgreens. Not because it's too expensive, but what I hear is that they just can't eat that much, which I have a problem with because I destroy food like no one's business. But if it's just 2 people, sometimes they just won't go through them, so they don't want them to go to waste. So they do like the 3 ounce packaging. 3 ounces of broccoli or cabbage is quite a bit. Like if you're just using it sparingly on a salad or sandwich, it's not a lot. So in summary, packaging costs are going to be higher for a retail or a co-op store, something with a client side facing on a shelf, so price accordingly. Restaurants can command the highest premium, but are usually going to require the most work, so you have to be willing to foster that relationship and have a premium product to take care of. Resellers are your best one and are going to be distributors and aggregators.